Ukraine has just done something that will change the fate of the Middle East forever, and it did not do it by selling long-range missiles, sending battalions of troops, or formally entering into a direct war in the Gulf. What has happened is much deeper. Kiev has exported a technology born from 4 years of a brutal and existential war, a technological colossus forged in the most advanced laboratory of violence in the world that has now established an operational base in the Persian Gulf. For years, Iranian-made suicide drones terrorized Ukrainian cities, destroying their electrical grid and striking at the heart of their infrastructure. However, in March of 2026, those same drones attempted to replicate the terror on the energy installations and desalination plants of the Arab monarchies. What Iran did not expect, and what even the United States was watching with astonishment, is that Ukraine already had the cure for that poison. By joining forces with the Gulf countries, Ukraine has deployed a technological asymmetry that is using Tehran's own weapon against Tehran, neutralizing the most powerful card of Iranian influence in the region in a single tactical blow and returning peace to the skies of the Gulf. Like, subscribe, and share. Let's begin. At the end of March of 2026, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky's surprise tour of the Gulf began discreetly, but its results were seismic. The signing of 10-year defense agreements with powers such as Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and the United Arab Emirates has completely disrupted all of Tehran's and Moscow's strategic plans. These pacts are not simple diplomatic promises on wet paper. They are massive agreements that guarantee the establishment of joint weapons production facilities and, above all, the exchange of technological knowledge that Ukraine has perfected under real fire. Kyiv is not offering theories. It is delivering a proven combat capability that devastates enemy forces. Intelligence reports and open-source data, OSINT, indicate that Ukraine has taken active control of the situation by deploying forces on the ground. More than 228 elite anti-drone warfare specialists carefully selected from Ukraine's National Security and Defense Council, NSDC, and the SBU Intelligence Service have been directly integrated into the operational defense networks of critical infrastructure in Saudi Arabia, the Emirates, Kuwait, and Jordan. This mission is not advisory in nature. These Ukrainian teams are operating on the electronic battlefield. Field images verified by independent analysts prove that Kiev's operators have already successfully shot down Iranian-made Shahed drones flying over the Gulf waters using their own specially developed interceptor drones. Delving into the technical details, one understands why Iran's asymmetric warfare doctrine has crumbled. The Tehran regime has based its power strategy on holding the region hostage with very low-cost weapons. A Shahed 136 suicide drone costs just between $20,000 and $40,000. Until now, Gulf countries were forced to respond with American Patriot missiles, whose cost per shot amounts to $4 million. This financial equation was unsustainable and gave Iran an overwhelming psychological and economic advantage. However, Ukrainian technology has broken that logic relentlessly. Its FPV interceptor drones, highly maneuverable and equipped with advanced acoustic sensors, have a production cost of just $2,000 to $5,000 per unit. This defense network, perfected under Russian bombardments, now forms an impeccable shield over the skies of the Persian Gulf. Threats are no longer hunted with million-dollar missiles, but with smart munitions that cost even less than the attacker's weapon. Iran's cheap intimidation tactics have crashed head-on against Ukraine's wall of innovation, plunging Tehran and its ally in Moscow into a state of deep strategic paralysis. Ukraine's Ministry of Defense has announced that it can already produce up to 2,000 of these defensive drones per day, provided funding is secured. And here is where geopolitics takes a masterstroke turn. Saudi Arabia's enormous capital and Qatar's sovereign funds are beginning to flow directly into these production lines. Iran's drones are now intercepted by Ukrainian signals intelligence networks at the precise moment they take off. Their navigation systems are disabled through GPS spoofing tactics and destroyed by kinetic attacks before they can see their target. This defense shield is not just a military success. It is the effective closure of the blackmail policy that Iran has exercised through its proxy forces throughout the Middle East. The domino effect of this collapse extends far beyond military bases. Iran's prestige as a regional power has been devastated. The doctrine of extracting diplomatic concessions by threatening energy markets has failed in the face of Ukraine's counter-asymmetric technology. Gulf countries no longer look to the sky with the same anxiety as before. Their airspace is now protected by veterans forged in the fires of a war that has stopped even the heaviest bombardments of Russian aviation. As the Shaheds are shot down one by one like flies, the Tehran regime faces internal chaos caused by failed operations and a weapons investment that is turning into piles of useless metal just across its borders. Like, subscribe, and share. However, the most devastating shockwave is felt in the corridors of the Kremlin. One of the fundamental pillars of Vladimir Putin's economy was global arms exports, and the Middle East was always his preferred market. Ukraine's performance in the Gulf has irreversibly shattered the reputation of the Russian industrial military complex. Instead of acquiring the cumbersome and obsolete S-400 or Panzer systems, which have proven ineffective against modern attacks, Arab leaders are making massive investments in Ukrainian technologies, which are faster, cheaper, and more effective. While Moscow's pavilions at international arms fairs remain deserted, the interception systems developed in Kiev are being reserved through contracts worth billions of dollars. Russian contracts are being cancelled in a chain, strangling the flow of hot money into the Kremlin's coffers. The most ironic thing about this situation is that the dark arms trade between Russia and Iran has become a boomerang that has hit them back. Russia used the Shahed drones it bought from Iran on the Ukrainian front, analyzed their flaws, and sent modernized versions back to Tehran, believing it would make Iran more lethal against Western interests. However, this process involuntarily transformed the Ukrainian army into the most experienced drone hunter on the planet. Russia indirectly perfected the enemy that is now destroying its own interests in the Middle East. Putin is forced to watch, with absolute impotence, as the weapons he supplied to his ally are rendered useless by his arch-enemy in a region where Russia was once a dominant actor. It is a double-edged geopolitical disaster. The weakness of Russian technology is exposed and its vision of being a superpower in the Arab world is destroyed. Zelensky's diplomatic maneuvers have permanently hacked the geopolitical chessboard. The Gulf bloc, which for years flirted with Russia and China in the face of the apparent weakening of the United States security umbrella, has now placed Ukraine at the center of its national security architecture. This redefines the historical tension between Sunnis and Shiites, shifting the conflict toward the axis of advanced technology and artificial intelligence. Moscow's strategy of using the Middle East as a lever against the West has died upon crashing into this new allied wall. Petrodollars are now financing Kiev's next-generation systems, undermining Putin's strategy of economically isolating Ukraine. The country the Kremlin sought to bring to its knees through sanctions is now treated as an indispensable strategic partner by the wealthiest energy exporters on the planet. On the other hand, the resistance axis orchestrated by Iran has suffered a coup de grace. Tehran's influence always depended on deniable attacks and low-cost chaos through its militias. But with Gulf borders protected by Ukrainian autonomous shields, these proxy forces lose all their strategic weight. This technological failure of Iran has the potential to trigger internal rebellions within the regime itself, since the drone program, which cost decades and billions to build, has been proven useless against Ukraine's asymmetric ingenuity. By transforming its war of survival into a massive engine of innovation, Ukraine has not only secured its own future, but has risen to the position of global security exporter, rendering the classic Cold War military doctrines obsolete. The alliance forged by Putin and Khamenei has been trapped in its own backyard by the technical creativity that emerged from the laboratory of violence they themselves created on Ukrainian soil. The balance of power in the Middle East is no longer measured by barrels of oil or by the range of heavy ballistic missiles, but by microchips, algorithms, and the audacity of battle-hardened engineers from Kiev. The geopolitical horizon of the region has been reshaped by Ukraine's technological genius. The Gulf, which for years was attempted to be molded with fear, has surrendered its defense doctrine to innovation proven on the battlefield. The terror of Iran's drones and Russia's global arms empire have been irreversibly eliminated in the face of this historic alliance that no one, not even in Washington, was able to foresee with such clarity. The center of gravity of modern warfare has shifted position. The rules of the game have been rewritten from scratch by a nation that refused to die. Ukraine has evolved from being a nation that only defended its territory to becoming a global power that is redesigning the security architecture of an entire region vital to the planet. The chaos created by the Moscow and Tehran regimes is now bursting through their own doors, inflicting upon them the most humiliating defeat in their recent history. The Middle East has changed forever, and there is no safe refuge for those who base their power on the terrorism of low-cost drones. The era of Iranian intimidation has come to its end under the Ukrainian steel sky that now protects the flow of the world's energy. The speed with which Ukraine has achieved this technological transfer demonstrates that adaptability is the new currency of exchange in the geopolitics of the 21st century. While traditional great powers move with the slowness of heavy bureaucracies, Kyiv has demonstrated an astonishing agility, connecting its war laboratories directly with the Gulf command centers. This synergy between Arab capital and Ukrainian ingenuity is the foundation of a new world order where asymmetric technology is the supreme judge. Russia and Iran, stuck in imperial visions of the past, have been unable to keep pace with a nation that has learned to innovate under the pressure of a large-scale invasion. The failure of their weapon systems is, ultimately, the failure of their authoritarian political models in the face of the creativity of a democracy in struggle. As the last grains of sand in the hourglass run out for Moscow and Tehran, it becomes clear that their influence in the Middle East has evaporated. The next-generation drone interception systems manufactured in Ukraine are now the gold standard of the defense industry. This is the result of turning necessity into virtue. Ukraine is not only winning its war at home, but is ensuring that no one else has to suffer the terror of the drones that it has already learned to defeat. The security architecture of the Gulf no longer depends on the blackmail of a strait or on the will of a theocratic regime, but on the technical excellence of a partner that understands the value of freedom because it defends it every day with its own life. This masterstroke by Ukraine on the global chessboard is a lesson in geopolitical realism. It does not matter how many allies an aggressor has if its technology is surpassed by the innovation of its victim. The paralysis of the Russian and Iranian defense industries is the testimony of this change of era. The world no longer seeks weapons that only serve for parades. It seeks tools that win real wars in the most efficient way possible. And in that new market, Ukraine is the undisputed leader. The Middle East has found in Kyiv the ally it needed to neutralize its most persistent threats, sealing a partnership that will define the stability of the region for the coming decades. Terror has been defeated by ingenuity, and peace in the Gulf now has an unmistakable Ukrainian accent. Like, subscribe and share. Until next time.